And we're coming to you live for the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan, simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are in the free Odyssey app, good Monday morning. Championship Sunday is set after a fun divisional playoff weekend that ended with another classic between the Bills and the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen going at it. Just an amazing game that I'm sure is going to get a monster rating. Good game Sunday night, deep freeze across the country. These two teams, close game. Most of the country was probably watching that, and rightfully so last night. So we had a good game Saturday night. The Ravens pulled away from the Texans earlier Saturday. You had a pretty good game between the Lions and the Buccaneers as well, and it ended with the classic last night. So we will see. Only one more weekend, and we're going to find out who is in Vegas. Good morning, Don Corleone. How are you?
Hey, dude. Good morning, G. I can always tell how many people are watching the game just by the comments about what the hell I'm wearing. And I'm glad that what I was wearing stuck out more than the game did. It seemed like anyway, at least on my feeds. But it's exactly the way Victor wanted me to look, and what Victor wants, Victor gets.
And that's Victor Talbot, who was dressing you for these games.
Exactly, man. It was great, man. I love it. Love the pinstripe, and I'll be rocking the pinstripe for the Super Bowl too. So
are you
get used to it, man?
You're gonna go back to it for the Super Bowl?
Oh yeah, look at that, man. That looks good. Hey, man. You know what? I'll tell you what. It's elegant, high fashion. Not everybody gets it. I understand that. That's okay. That's fine. You could pull something like that off. You look good in that. But that's all right. Don't worry about it. I saw you busting my chops on X.
I had to. I felt like everybody was waiting for me to say something. It was like I had to.
Everybody was
waiting for me. I had all these. I had more people tweet me yesterday than have in the last I don't know how long. I felt like I had to say something.
And that's what happens when you wear something so elegant. That's just the way it goes. I can't tell. Look. It's not normally what I wear, but it's something that, because it's the playoffs, you want to dress up a little bit more. You want to feel a little bit more impactful, and certainly that was the case. So I'm all good. A lot of people didn't see the pregame show because we got covered up because the other game was still being played.
Yep.
And until Baker Mayfield threw that final interception, I'm sure people then kind of flipped over and then everything else. But it was really halftime. And loved it. Loved every minute. Loved all the comments.
Dave Portnoy.
Loved it.
He chimed in.
Whatever.
Now, before you get to the game, just quickly, how does this come about? Do you ask Victor Talbot, I want the pinstripes, or he tells you, I think you should be in the pinstripes, and then you go, yes?
We sit down in the offseason, and we decide, okay, this is what we're going to do for the season. He picks out the patterns. Now, he's a little bit more flamboyant in terms of his patterns for me. So sometimes I feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I have to tell you, I got a lot of compliments yesterday. Now, whether or not they're true or not, or they're just fugazi, who knows? But it seems like some people really, really liked it. Some people really didn't like it. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to continue to do what I do, man.
And you're going to break it out again for the Super Bowl?
Maybe not that one, a different one.
Different color, maybe?
A little different color, yeah.
Double-breasted, different color pinstripe?
Yeah, baby.
All right, might as well.
We are in Vegas, by the way.
Might as well, yeah. Step it up.
I can tell you that the biggest question I have is whether or not I wear a dark shirt or a light shirt, because I do have an electric tie.
You have an electric tie?
Yeah. So these are big decisions we have to make.
Now, the other thing that
I'm privileged to be able to make those decisions.
Yes, you are. The other thing, people were tweeting me, they thought maybe the jacket was a little small because the one button was hanging on. Did you feel like you were constricted up there? A lot of people.
No, I will say that I did actually fit for these suits back in May. So
I know all about that.
Now here we are.
Trust me.
December. I was thinking about going on a bone broth diet, so we'll see.
At the end of the season, right? I mean, this is you went through eating season. There's a lot of work.
I don't really give a flying rip. Right. I don't really give a flying rip. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So all I know is I'll be in Baltimore next Sunday.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's going to be a reasonably nice day. It sounds like there may be a little bit rain in the long range forecast, which would really be disappointing because. You want to see everybody playing at their best. And I think the rain in San Francisco impacted that game negatively.
Well, for the Niners, at least.
It should have been a better offensive game totally, but it wasn't. And then, good for Brock Purdy that he was able to lead a fourth quarter comeback. When he had the ball last and he had to make plays, he made the plays. So that system quarterback showed up and showed how the system is supposed to work when you're making plays in the most important part of, in the game. So And then last night, I think what we saw is that Buffalo just ran out of key players. No Gabe Davis, so that means Sherfield has to play. He drops the ball. Steph Diggs drops the long ball. Josh Allen is playing heroic football, trying to will his team to win. Their defense, especially at the linebacker level, was completely decimated. And you see A.J. Klein trying to run with Travis Kelce. Very difficult there. But I think we got the two best teams, and I think we have the best matchup from a viewing standpoint, because I do believe that Steve Spagnuolo and the defense of the Kansas City Chiefs is hopefully good enough to keep this game relatively close. And then Patrick Mahomes, out of all the quarterbacks left, is the guy that's going to be able to handle the chaos and the noise down there in Baltimore. And hopefully we have a really good AFC Championship game, and it's close.
Yeah.
It comes down to the end, just like last night did.
Yeah, I think I agree from a football standpoint, obviously, with the Chiefs winning this game and how good they looked offensively. Really, for the first time, they were clicking on all cylinders offensively.
But it has something to do with the Bills' defense.
No, I understand,
the Bills' defense is not the same.
But still, it's not like they played great defenses for 17 games during the regular season. They struggled. And I think with Rice really coming into his own, Pacheco turning it on towards the end of the season, and Patrick Mahomes just crazy championship elite greatest of all time mentality is what has brought them there, and obviously great coaching as well, as we know. But I did want, from a storyline standpoint, as much as I don't love the Lions because I'm a Vikings fan, if you would have had two teams that had never won a Super Bowl in the championship game and a potential matchup between those two, that would have been a lot of fun, or at least one of them getting there. And I do feel terrible for Bills fans. They are passionate. They are into it. There's not a ton of stuff to do in Buffalo. They are completely invested, and they got their hearts ripped out again by the same old villain. And it reminds me a little bit of the Knicks and Michael Jordan. That's what it was kind of reminding me of. Like, you're really, really good, but you just can't beat him.
Troy Aikman did that to Brett Favre, and as Tom Brady did that to somebody. I forget who he did it to. I think they're 3-0 against, their rivals, if you will, within their conferences. Maybe not their division, but within their conference. And it's interesting because Buffalo and Kansas City will play again next year during the regular season. That's how the schedules will match up. And I think Jim Nantz was talking about that yesterday. But it was interesting because at the outset of the game, Tony Romo was talking about the wind, which way the wind was going. So if you were watching on TV, the wind was behind the team that was going from left to right on your TV. And at the beginning of the game, if you win the coin toss, you can defer. And then the second half, you can determine which way you want to go. And Buffalo determined that they wanted to have the wind at their back at the end of the game, so in the fourth quarter. And their kicker ends up missing a kick with the wind behind him.
Yeah, and it just hooked right out of nowhere. And of course, obviously, the wide right stuff. It's just, how Jets fans will say things like, I can't believe it, it's amazing, everything you try to do ends up coming up crap. Well, yes, they're right about that. And with Bills fans, it's stuff like this. It's like getting to those moments and not being able to get over the hump. And then their worst nightmare in the history of the franchise, Scott Norwood, wide right, comes back to bite them in this situation. Now, it wasn't the reason they lost the game. It was a huge part of it. And making that kick is something you got to do when you're a professional kicker in a playoff game in your home stadium and you choose the wind, as you say. You got to make the kick. But, Josh Allen missed a throw. And I know that Tony Romo said that Chris Jones pushed the offensive lineman into him, and that affected the throw. I don't think that it did. I think
he just short-armed.
Yeah.
And by the way, that was it seemed like the same play that Gabe Davis scored.
Right, 2 years ago.
2 years ago. It seemed like a seam route right down the middle.
He had him.
And he had him wide open. But, Steph Diggs drops one on the sideline. Sherfield earlier in the game drops one.
Yeah.
This game could have been worse if McCole Hardman, former Jet McCole Hardman, doesn't fumble the ball out of the end zone.
Yeah, and of course that rule hopefully is gone this offseason and into next season. We all know how stupid it is, but it is the rule now. So immediately when you saw that, you knew what was going to happen. But it's the dumbest rule in the game. We've been over it a million times, and that probably would have been the thing we were talking about if the Bills had won. But, man, I tell you, the Chiefs, we've been trying to, as NFL fans, find ways to poke holes in the Chiefs for a number of years. Going into last season, the division got so good. I mean, think about it. Now the Chargers had a great offseason, and the Broncos got Russell Wilson.
And Sean Payton.
Right, and Sean Payton. And the Raiders are getting better, and all this crap that was going on there, and they go out there and they win a Super Bowl. And then this year, I mean, I was guilty of it too. They're not the same team. Offensively, they're not the same. Travis Kelce, after a good start, is sort of fallen off. The defense is good, but this is the worst offense we've seen. One of these teams in the AFC is going to pick them off, and it hasn't happened yet. It could be the Baltimore Ravens, who looked awesome in the second half against the Texans. But, I mean, how do you bet against Patrick Mahomes at this point? How do you do it?
Well, I'll tell you, the Ravens, you take a look at their schedule, and you take a look at how they've just been kicking everybody's ass. And the fact that they did not garner one turnover against C.J. Stroud in Houston, that is a real feather in the cap of C.J. Stroud, a rookie quarterback who doesn't throw an interception, doesn't fumble in the pocket, doesn't fumble when he takes off and runs with the ball. That guy played, I thought, his ass off, given the chaos that Mike McDonald's defense creates down in Baltimore, especially with the noise down there.
Yeah.
And so that kid handled it pretty well. But you beat a team as bad, and you know, the only way Houston scored was with the punt return. They had the field goal, of course, but they had the punt return. Other than that, they didn't get a sniff. And I mean, that is kicking a team's ass. You get no turnovers, yet you beat them as bad as the Ravens beat them. That goes to show you just how good the Ravens are. And when you take a look at the Ravens and all the teams that they beat this year by at least 14 points or more, or all these winning teams, and that just goes to show you that, number one, the defense is good for sure. But Lamar Jackson's a different type of player. Now, he's playing the same way he's always played, but he is so much more focused and in on winning now that, of course, the story coming out of that Baltimore Ravens game was his tirade at halftime, where he just went after everybody.
Yeah.
A younger Lamar Jackson was not going to do that. This is a different type of player that has different expectations for himself and his team. And he's acting like it. And they showed he took off on one of these running plays that was called, and Ronnie Stanley is big left tackle, and he ran into each other. And you could see after the play was over, Lamar's on his back, and he's like screaming because Ronnie Stanley blocked the wrong guy. And if he blocks the right guy, he's probably still running. You know, the old Lamar doesn't do that. This is the new and improved Lamar, where he is getting into the faces of his teammates. And sometimes that's good, and I think that's what John Harbaugh wants. And he basically lit into everybody at halftime in that second half. They just took it to another level, and Houston couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is the time that somebody takes out Patrick Mahomes, but I can't bet against them anymore. Last year, I was all in on the Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC Championship game, and here comes Patrick Mahomes and beats him again. And yesterday, I was all in on the Bills getting to the AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes does it again. So even if I convince myself that the Baltimore Ravens are going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, I will not put a cent on the Baltimore Ravens. Patrick Mahomes has taken my money plenty at this point.
And, you know, early in the game, I would tell you that Patrick was off.
No, for sure. I agree.
There were a couple guys he had open that he had overthrown when they were going left to right, and the wind was behind him. He was a little trouble negotiating that win, which I could totally understand. But, you know, Buffalo's defense is just not the same, you know, that it was. And like I said, it was a nice story. A.J. Klein is a great story. But when you get him locked up on Travis Kelce, it's a completely different set of circumstances.
And also, you know, it was not the same as it was is Steph Diggs. I mean, I understand everybody's focusing on the drop, but that was really the only time that they fed the ball to him down the field. I mean, there's just something. He's not getting separation down the field.
He's kind of lost the step.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear. Obvious. And they try to get the ball in his hands around the line of scrimmage and stuff. That happens like 4, 5, 6 times a game.
Well, they were trying to get him involved early and often so he doesn't become a distraction on the sideline.
But he can't get down the field open anymore, clearly.
He's done. He's done there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it sounds like.
He will be done there. They'll redo their wide receiver core. And, you know, Josh will have probably, you know, I will say James Cook came into his own this year, so that's good. They have that coming back. They do have Dalton Kincaid and, you know, and Knox as their tight ends, which are very good. They have a very good offensive line. So they'll be right in the mix next year, and they will get faster. And the Shakir kid is really fast for them. And he made some nice plays yesterday, too. So, hey, look, the cupboard's not bare. They just got to stay healthy. They'll most likely get rid of Von Miller.
Yeah.
You know, he made a couple plays yesterday, but we really haven't seen much of him at all this year coming off of that knee injury. So I would think that he's probably done there. But it, you know, when you also think about this, too. So we think about coaches, John Harbaugh and Andy Reid, two great coaches. And by the way, John Harbaugh is the prime example of why you stay with a coach. An owner, Steve Bisciotti, very people know anything about, runs a steady hand, steady ship, has had 2 GMs, Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta, and John Harbaugh. How many times has John Harbaugh won a Super Bowl?
Oh, one time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't fire coaches, if they don't make it. Like there's something to his level of excellence that for some reason the perception is, they'll never fire him. But meanwhile, we got to get rid of Nick Sirianni. We got to get rid of Mike McCarthy because those guys suck. If they felt that way about John Harbaugh 5 years ago, they would have fired him.
Yeah.
But there's a culture there. There's a real professional way of doing things. And I will say that in the AFC North, I feel like 3 organizations are kind of the same way, and that's the Steelers, the Bengals, and, of course, the Ravens. I'm not sure about the Browns because some of the decisions that they've made over the last 10 years are ridiculous.
I mean, one thing, though, I know that the comparisons with Sirianni, McCarthy, Harbaugh, but not every situation is the same. There were a couple times that we felt like, especially in the playoffs, where the teams looked like they were not prepared to play these playoff games. That's something that never happens with a John Harbaugh team.
No, you're right.
Some coaches are just better than other coaches.
Right. And last year, we questioned whether or not Lamar should have played in the playoffs. And, his backup went in there, and they almost won a game. And if it wasn't for an incredible fumble return by the Cincinnati Bengals on defense, Trey Hendrickson, I think it was.
I think so.
And he took it back like 99 yards down on the goal line. They probably don't win that game. And John Harbaugh and the Ravens are moving on with Tyler Huntley as their backup quarterback, which is amazing to me. But I was talking about, so we have 2 great quarterbacks. We have the presumptive MVP. We have a guy who's 6-0 in divisional games, a guy that's going to his 6th straight AFC Championship game in Patrick Mahomes. So we have that covered. We have 2 great kickers. So 2 kickers missed kicks this weekend. Anders Carlson for the Packers, and then yesterday Tyler Bass for Buffalo. Those kicks end up killing those teams.
Absolutely.
And you have 2 great kickers in Harrison Butker and Justin Tucker playing in this AFC Championship game. And it just kind of goes to show you just never know when those guys are going to end up showing up and being important. But these 2 guys have been proven winners. So you got all the stars and get the right teams, I believe, in the AFC Championship game.
All right, Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network, just getting started on this Monday morning. Jerry Recco is back. He's got an update for us, just a couple of minutes.